Hello everyone, my name is Kamila. I work as a senior UX researcher at Wargaming. I usually do research for World of Warships team, that's the game like warship shooter. This particular talk was prepared with another team, with my colleague Rich Davis, because their team did separate research, and we will talk about what we found out. So basically today I will cover two separate research that were conducted in two different laboratories, but with as the same scenario. And in one case, we used observation interviews plus eye tracking, and in another case, they were EEG. And we compare results, and we have some considerations about using EEG. So we will talk about two research results, comparison, and our thoughts on that. Before we start, just a splash of background. I used to study economic psychology as a master student, and we had a cognitive neuroscience lab with all this fancy stuff like TMS, fMRI, so on and so forth. And we usually thought that that's the real science, that's the real objective methods, and these interviews and observations, we look down on them. And when I joined IT company as a UX researcher at that time, I found out that usually a lot of decisions in business are made based on interviews and observations and not these sophisticated tools. So I always wonder how maybe is it right or not? Maybe we need more sophisticated tools to support the data. And so that's why I'm very happy that I have this opportunity to compare basically two approaches. And for the purpose of this particular study, I will refer as biometry to eye tracker and EEG. That's the tools we worked with. And I should say a couple of disclaimers. First of all, the game is more complicated than I will explain it. So if there is World of Warships players, we love you. We know that the game is complicated. I will just explain it because I have no time to explain it fully. And I will show some insights that may look simple just because it's easier to explain on simple examples. But there were more insights, of course. Before we start, World of Warships is slow-paced PvP, PvE shooter where you play ship and try to kill other ships. And we did, as I told you, we did two researches. First research was conducted in our Belgrade laboratory. This is the real picture of our Belgrade laboratory. And we recruited World of Warships players, asked them to play some battles, and recorded the sessions and made follow-up interviews and observed, using our observation maps, observed their battles. And we also had not only current players, but new players, because we had some hypotheses on that. And the research subject was combat feedback. In our case, it was ribbons. It's something you get in the game while you shoot enemies or do something against enemies. So this is like your rewards. And damage counters, that's basically the numbers of the damage you caused to enemy ships. And mini-map, it's a small tactical map. So the first finding was we found the difference, we observed the difference between new players and current players, and we found out that current players change the setting of minimap and play like this. So you see that new players, they use the default settings, and current players enhance a minimap. So we wondered how do they use it, what is the difference, and we saw on eye tracker, we saw it like this. So what we found out that current players enhance minimap, and they navigate only using minimap. They look at minimap to navigate, and new players look around to navigate, to aim, and to do so on and so forth. Regarding the ribbons, during interviews, we found out that we actually thought that, okay, ribbons, they have some purpose, like maybe some missions, and they need them like information. And we found out that they have like emotional support for the players during the battle, and some players even look at them while playing to cheer themselves up. And in the game we have torpedo mechanics. We have these destroyers, like very fast ships, and they pull torpedoes and cause a lot of damage. When we talked with players about torpedoes, so we noticed that torpedoes are very annoying to those who get them. But yeah, those who launch them, they feel great enjoyment. Yeah, the second research was conducted with external vendor, with those who are experts in EEG, and it was conducted in parallel. Actually, we didn't first we didn't know about two researches, and then we found out that we had the same scenarios. That's why we decided to compare, and we're very happy about that. So they use like the same scenario. They use EEG, and they use current World of Warship players. And before we go to the findings, a brief introduction about our ships types. So we have some ships like battleships. They're like tanky, they're very slow, but they cause huge damage. And there are these destroyers with torpedoes, which are annoying, too fast, but they are weak. So one shot and you will eliminate them. And we have cruisers, which is in the middle. We also have aircraft carriers where you play actually planes, so it's like you're above. And we have submarines, and you go under the water world. And we compared, our vendors helped us to compare all the ship types in terms of their brain graphics. And it looked like this. This is the picture that I wrote myself just to, I draw it just to give the perception on average how it might look like. So basically what we get from our vendors, we had a lot of, we have graphics like battles and dynamic of changing the brain activity and positivity. So basically they measured activity and like mood. And what we found out that these tanky battleships, because they have these cooldowns, they have spikes in their brain activity. So they strike somebody and they get boring, and that's the battle. With cruisers, if they somehow manage till the middle of the battle, then they feel better, and then the game starts for them. For destroyers, they always like hyperactive, and very positive about it. And with aircraft carriers, we found that their activity is very high. It seems that their brain works a lot to play, and the positivity usually goes down, and they have intensive battles. And with submarines, we didn't test them because at that time they were a rework, so we didn't include it in any of the study, just to not get biased. And with what we found about torpedoes, actually we noticed that those who launch them, when they get this ribbon of hitting by torpedo, they feel better. And with those who anticipate them, they have high brain activity and low positivity. It seems that they are annoying. And with the ribbons in general, we see that even if it's the end of the battle, even if everything is not so good or you get boring, you still we see that the mood, this orange line, goes up whenever they notice the ribbons, either get them or look at those which stuck in the upper right corner. And with these aircraft carrier players, we actually were very curious and a little bit anxious about how they survive, because it seemed that they have very high intensity and maybe they have cognitive overload. But in our game, there is a feature. There is a long waiting time before the next battle. And with these particular players, this time is maybe enough for them to calm down and to get their brain activity to more like balanced norm and then play next intense battle. And if we compare the results that I told you, which we got from two different studies, what we found out that actually, of course, we could get such insights without a tracker, maybe without EEG. We can observe and ask players to explain. We can make observation and interviews. And of course, the results would be limited. It would be self-reported data, but still we could manage to get these insights. But the tools really bring the flavor and bring some kind of justification for some of insights. And we saw it more like on a database, not like self-reported speech, but the data. And because of this, we had several considerations about tools in general. First of all, of course, we have methodological limits, because with EEG, we know that it could be noise sensitive. That's why you usually hire a lab who knows how to avoid all these confound variables and get the right data. There could be variations between participants, and as far as I know, EEG itself does not measure emotions, it measures mood. But for emotions, you need another tool, facial recognition. And with eye tracker, we use it in our Belgrade laboratory. We always struggle with calibration. Sometimes it takes us like 30 minutes to calibrate eye tracker to make it high accurate, because of course we can use low accuracy and just observe it, not calculate anything. But if we want to calculate the data, we need high accuracy and we need to calibrate it a bit longer. And our Belgrade eye tracker is somehow eye color sensitive. It calibrates quickly players with light eye color, and somehow it took more time to calibrate a person with dark eye color. Another consideration, like we have like all costs, like time and price. With the tools, on average, like eye tracker might cost, you need a subscription, and it may cost like around 15,000 euros per year for subscription. And with EEG, one study with external vendor may cost, like in different labs, it could be different cost, but on average it could cost like 50,000 euros per research. And with, especially with EEG, you will need an expert. And so if you have it in your lab, you will need to hire a psychologist who can use it. And otherwise, you should go to the external experts and hire vendors or consultants. And as I told, with the eye track and calibration time, that's why it's time consuming, especially comparing with quick online tests, these lab tests with calibrations, it could take time. And that's why we have consideration about designing the game, about the stages of game design. So if we will refer to double diamond design process, where we have discovery stage and delivery stage, what we think, I believe that the tools, the biometry could really benefit discovery stage when you have rather research questions than research hypotheses, and you can explore. You can take your time to hire external agency, and you can dive in. But once you have prototypes, concepts, your designers will ask you to do it fast. And maybe you won't have time to calibrate eye tracker. Maybe it's really okay to go with a series of tests with observation interviews, like you play tests, usability tests, and you do them like fast and try to iterate. So you test, change something in your prototype, and test again. So in this case, maybe on the delivery stage, on the concept stages, observations with interviews would be a nice baseline. You still get nice data, and it would be fast. And so, to conclude, I believe that interviews and observations are still good methods to gather data, are still the baseline, because even if you use tool, you will still have interviews and observations. But however, biometric tools may really bring something interesting, some insights, can measure cognitive overload if it's relevant to the game, and bring some kind of justification and objective data to the insight that you get through interviews and observation. So that's basically it, and I think we have time for questions. Great. So thank you very much for listening to me. I would be happy to answer your questions, but may I ask my colleague Rich Davis, he's here, to join me on the Q&A session, because he knows better than I about EEG, and he did this second research, that's EEG.
All right, thank you so much. We do have questions and time to answer them. That's fantastic. So either of you, is the positive mood tracked?
Hello. Yes, so positive mood tracking. So the first thing to say is EEG. You have, at least in this case, we had an external provider who popped a very fancy, attractive cap on players' heads, which are then attached to electrodes, which are then hooked up to a machine. And what they're actually tracking is different forms of like electrical signals that are firing in the brain. Now, the first thing that they actually have to do is remove the noise. And so one of the things my background is sociology rather than science or psychology. So it's a learning process for me as well. There's no baseline, something's happy, something's sad. This is individually experienced. So that means there's a certain level of baseline that has to be created. And that can be affected by things like general mood, if you've done some exercise before you did the play test, certain things that you might have eaten, any movement, your general emotional state. So the first thing to say is there is no quote-unquote emotional baseline that exists where you can say this player is happy and this player is sad, comparatively speaking. There is a baseline that has to be created per player. And then in terms of the emotional states itself, it's basically different levels of brain activity, type of brain activity, and brain signals that's taking place. Again, as Kamila said, there's some interpretation and reading that takes place as well. So there's someone who generally has to kind of be able to read the data and then be able to pull apart that noise and have difference. Now, positivity and negativity is just a kind of again, interpretation. What they like to do, at least the providers, they also try to provide some 4 emotional states as well. But generally speaking, it's quite interpretive at that point. So it's basically the brain activity, you have an expert who can read that noise, and then it's baselined based on an individual participant rather than kind of comparatively speaking. So, yeah.
Where in the game interface does eye tracking provide the most valuable insights?
In our case, the battle HUD, because during like meta interface, we call it meta interface. The interface is outside of battle. You can ask, where are you looking now? What you try to do, and you can look at the mouse. But during the battle, you cannot look at the mouse, and you really need to know where they look. So in our case, it's battle HUD.
Should UX research be conducted for projects that haven't been released yet? What general advice would you give for this type of testing?
If you have budget, test it. If you don't have budget, actually, I had this IT background. Like I worked as a researcher in IT companies, and we always have the rule: it's better to do research than not to do. If you don't have like budget or laboratory or something, hallway test is a solution as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that point. It's basically, I think, if you've got a side office and just a laptop, I think you can do a UX test. You don't need a lot of the fancy tech. As Kamila was pointing out, that's more like the frosting on the cake, being able to kind of beautify or justify with certain forms of data, but getting someone actually in front of you and saying, can you find this on the screen? Can you do this? Can you enter this point? I think that's the most effective piece of research you can do, and you don't need a huge budget. You just need a bit of time, a bit of thought, and it's really effective, I think, in a large proportion of the projects that we do.
What is the return on investment on the cost of this hardware and software? Does management approve the cost for this due to ROI?
Yeah, that's why we actually didn't buy EEG in the lab, but we bought eye tracker, and in our case, it has a nice cost to value ratio, I believe, because we can test HUD during the battles, and something that players cannot tell us where they look. But we cannot interrupt them during the battles. That's why, in our case, eye tracker is okay. With EEG, it's better.
So interestingly enough, this project came from a senior member of the leadership team of the company. And the piece of research that they wanted to do was actually to see if advanced biometric data can actually provide us more insights and valuable insights that could be utilized by game designers. And what they wanted to do was, this was exploratory in nature. A key component of this was to see, okay, during gameplay, is the actual design of the game being fulfilled from like the emotional state? Are we giving players the highs where we want to? Are the lows something that we need to be concerned about? Now, the fundamental point was that this project ended up taking like 4 or 5 months. It was a lot of data because it wasn't just this, but we were also looking at World of Tanks and a couple of competitor titles, and then compiling it all together. So it wasn't just this kind of initial readout. And the fundamental fact was we presented this data in front of designers, and I think one of the first things they said is, okay, what do we do with this? There's also a huge amount of data that you get from this. Again, sort of throwing this in front of designers without any kind of actionable interpretation or anything else, it's just more noise. So it also requires, what is the point of this? What are you trying to achieve with this? It was a really good experiment for us, because we could see, well, what was feasible, what was possible, but also what we should avoid doing, and we should have a plan for, when we're presenting this with developers, what do they actually want out of this? Because I think they were like, okay, cool, you know. So I think it's really important to also understand the application of this afterwards as well.
I'm gonna combine two questions. Interesting talk with these insights. What would the actionable outcome be beyond just being interesting? Which I'm gonna combine with, was the EEG actually worth it in the end?
I will answer about the outcome in terms of World of Warships. There were two outcomes. First of all, actually, our nice designers, thank you for coming. They used it for their reworking, like and working on HUD. And what we found out during the study is that maybe we are too hard for new players, and we had a huge follow-up diary studies on new players onboarding to help them to do with torpedoes and other stuff. So it was, I think it was it was a nice tool to convince the game designers that we have problems that we can solve with new players. We can help them.
In terms of overall value for money, I refer back to Camilla's point about how much money you have to spend if you're thinking about actually building this out into your lab. I think you need to think about the cost of actually investing and buying, the cost of creating a space where you can utilize it, and then quite probably a cost of hiring someone who knows how to utilize this and work with this data. So the question is, what kind of research are you actually doing right now? And I think you have to then ask, what does biometric data, what will you hope to achieve with biometric data that doesn't currently get answered from a usability playtest where you're recording people's faces and just mouse clicks and things like that? What actual addition are you getting? I would suggest if you do want to go down that road, probably the first thing you want to do is go to a specialist provider and actually provide, you know, a potential research project in mind to actually see what you can get. Because as I say, I think I had certain expectations of what you might get at the start, and it was actually only by talking to these consultants, they were actually telling you, no, I can't tell you 100% who's happy. No, I can't tell you, you know, what the baseline is for players who are experiencing pleasure or anything else. There is no magic number. So it's another layer of interpretation upon interpretation. For me, I think probably the telling thing is, since then we haven't had anyone ask us to do any EEG. I think that might be the telling point there. But certainly from my point of view, it was a great way of spending money because I'm much more learned now than I was before. But I don't know whether anyone else is thinking that either.
And yesterday we had guys from Antwerpen lab, and they told that they have nice prices. So if you want to explore, maybe it's a nice chance.
Awesome, and that's all the time that we have for questions. Thank you so much, both of you.